rain fell heavily over Bellarosa City. From the top floor of the Valdieri Tower, Matteo Valdieri watched lightning split the dark sky. Below him, the city continued to breathe, cars moved through wet streets, nightclub signs flickered, and people hurried home without realizing that half the city belonged, in one way or another, to the man standing behind the glass. Matteo was 46 years old and had controlled the Valdieri organization for nearly 2 decades. He had survived betrayals, police investigations, rival families, and assassination attempts. His name was spoken carefully by politicians, businessmen, and criminals alike. Yet that night, something as simple as a letter unsettled him. His personal assistant, Elias Venn, entered the office carrying the evening mail. "There's something unusual here, sir." Matteo turned. Elias placed a cream-colored envelope on the desk. There was no stamp, no return address, no recipient name. Only a small symbol drawn in black ink. A broken crown. Matteo's expression changed. He knew that symbol. He had not seen it in 22 years. "Who brought this?" "No one knows," Elias replied. "It was found among the documents delivered from the old family residence." Matteo slowly sat down. The old Valdieri residence had been abandoned since his father's death. Renovation workers had recently begun clearing the building before it was sold. Matteo opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. He read the first line, then stopped. His fingers tightened around the paper. The letter was addressed to someone named Gabriel. Matteo continued reading. The writer described a secret agreement made 22 years earlier. A plan involving Matteo's father, Vittorio Valdieri, and several senior members of the organization. The final paragraph made Matteo rise from his chair. "Gabriel, if you are reading this, then I have failed to protect you. Vittorio knows the truth, and he will do anything to keep Matteo from discovering what happened that night." Matteo read the sentence again. "What happened that night?" he whispered. Elias remained silent. The letter ended with only one initial, R. Matteo turned toward his assistant. "Find out who Gabriel is." Elias nodded. "And Elias?" "Yes, sir. No one must know about this letter." After Elias left, Matteo walked toward the window. For 22 years, he had believed he knew exactly how his father died. Vittorio Valdieri had supposedly suffered a heart attack during a private meeting at the family estate. Matteo had been 24. 3 days later, he inherited the organization. But the letter suggested that something had happened before Vittorio's death. Something involving Matteo himself. He looked down at the paper again. There was another sentence near the bottom. A sentence he had initially overlooked. "The boy Matteo believes died in the fire is alive." Matteo froze. Suddenly, he was no longer a powerful mafia boss standing above Bellarosa City. He was a 20-year-old man again, standing outside a burning warehouse, screaming his younger brother's name. Luca. The brother Matteo had buried 26 years ago. The brother whose body had never been found. The brother everyone told him was dead. Matteo picked up his phone. "Elias." "Yes, sir." "Forget Gabriel for now." There was silence. "Find Luca. Your brother." Matteo stared at the letter. "Yes. But sir, Luca died." Matteo's voice became cold. "That is what someone wanted me to believe." Across the city, inside a quiet apartment above an old bookshop, an elderly woman sat beside a telephone. Her name was Rosalia Crane. She had been waiting 22 years for someone to find that letter. But the wrong person had opened it. And now she knew that people would die trying to protect the truth. Elias Venn had served Matteo for 11 years. He was efficient, loyal, and almost impossible to surprise. But the investigation into Luca Valdieri surprised him immediately. There was no death certificate. No hospital record. No confirmed identification of a body. Only a police report stating that Luca Valdieri, aged 18, was presumed dead following the warehouse fire. Presumed. Elias read the words several times. The official report had been signed by Detective Anton Reeve, who had retired 15 years earlier. Elias found him living alone outside the city. The following morning, Elias visited him. Anton was 73 years old and walked with a cane. When Elias mentioned the Valdieri warehouse fire, the retired detective immediately tried to close his door. Elias stopped it with his hand. "I'm not here to threaten you. That's what Valdieri men always say. I only want the truth." Anton stared at him. "The truth is expensive. Name your price." The old detective shook his head. "I don't mean money." He allowed Elias inside. The house smelled of coffee and old books. Anton opened a locked cabinet and removed a thin file. "I kept this because I knew one day someone would come asking." He placed a photograph on the table. Elias picked it up. The image showed a young man being carried away from the burning warehouse. His face was injured and partly covered, but his features were visible. It was Luca Valdieri. Alive. Elias looked up. What happened to him? Anton sat down. Vittorio Valdieri happened. According to Anton, Luca had survived the fire. But before the police could officially record his survival, Vittorio's men arrived. They took Luca away. The police report was changed. Why? Elias asked. Anton hesitated. Because Luca had discovered something. What? I don't know. Who does? Anton pointed toward the photograph. The woman who rescued him. Who is she? Rosalia Crane. Elias felt his stomach tighten. The initial on the letter. R. Hours later, Elias called Matteo. We found the writer. Bring her to me. There's a problem. What problem? She disappeared this morning. Matteo went silent. Elias continued. Someone else is searching for her. Who? I don't know yet. Matteo ended the call and turned toward the three men seated inside his private conference room. Darius Kelm, Nico Ferran, and Silas Moretti. All three had served Matteo's father. All three had been present during the rise of the Valdieri organization. Matteo placed a copy of the letter on the table. He watched their faces. Darius looked confused. Nico looked angry. Silas looked terrified. Matteo noticed. Do you recognize the symbol? He asked. No one answered. Matteo pointed at the broken crown. My father used it for confidential family matters. Silas swallowed. Matteo leaned back. I have one question. The room became silent. Is my brother alive? Darius laughed nervously. Matteo, this is madness. Nico shook his head. Luca died in the fire. Matteo looked at Silas. The old man could not meet his eyes. Silas. Silas slowly raised his head. Matteo repeated the question. Is my brother alive? Silas whispered he was. The room froze. Matteo stood. What does that mean? Silas looked toward Darius. Darius suddenly reached inside his jacket. But Matteo's security chief, Arden Vale, moved faster. Within seconds, Darius was disarmed and forced against the wall. Matteo stared at him. Why were you reaching for a weapon? Darius said nothing. Matteo turned back to Silas. Speak. Silas looked exhausted. Your father believed Luca was planning to expose the organization. Expose what? Not the business. Then what? Silas looked directly at Matteo. Your father. Matteo frowned. Silas continued. Luca discovered that Vittorio had arranged the death of someone close to your family. Someone whose death allowed Vittorio to take control. Who? Before Silas could answer, the lights went out. Gunfire erupted outside the conference room. Arden pushed Matteo behind the reinforced desk. Security alarms screamed throughout the tower. When the emergency lights came on, Darius was gone. And Silas Moretti was lying unconscious on the floor. Someone had attacked Valdieri Tower. But Matteo understood something more disturbing. The attackers had not come to kill him. They had come to stop Silas from speaking. Rosalia Crane was found 3 days later. Not by Matteo. By Luca. He entered the abandoned railway station shortly after midnight, wearing a dark coat and carrying no weapon. Rosalia sat on an old wooden bench. You should never have sent the letter, Luca said. I didn't. He stopped. Rosalia looked at him. The house was being cleared. Someone found it. Who received it? Matteo. Luca closed his eyes. For 26 years, He had lived under another name, Gabriel Crane. The name in the letter. Rosalia had given it to him after saving him from the warehouse fire. After Vittorio's men had taken him from the hospital, Rosalia had helped him escape. Luca had spent years recovering. By the time he was strong enough to return, Vittorio was dead and Matteo had become the new boss. Luca decided to remain hidden. He believed distance would protect his brother. He had been wrong. Matteo is looking for you, Rosalia said. I know. You must speak to him. No. He deserves the truth. Luca's face hardened. The truth will destroy him. Rosalia stood. The lies are already doing that. Meanwhile, Matteo's organization was falling into chaos. Darius Kelm had disappeared. Several warehouses had been attacked. Bank accounts connected to the organization had been exposed. Someone was dismantling the Valdieri empire from inside. Matteo believed Darius was responsible. Elias believed otherwise. There's something you need to see, Elias said. He placed several photographs on Matteo's desk. They showed Darius meeting with a man outside the city. The man's face was partly hidden. But Matteo recognized the eyes. His own eyes. His family's eyes. Where was this taken? Yesterday. Matteo stared at the image. Is that Luca? I believe so. Matteo stood silently. His brother was alive. After 26 years, the truth was no longer a possibility. It was standing in a photograph. Bring him to me. Elias hesitated. There's more. He placed a financial report on the desk. The attacks against Matteo's businesses were being funded through accounts controlled by a company called Crown Meridian Holdings. Matteo recognized the name. His father had created the company. Who controls it now? Elias answered quietly. According to the documents, Gabriel Crane. Matteo looked at the photograph again. His brother was alive, and apparently destroying everything Matteo had inherited. That evening, Matteo received a phone call from an unknown number. He answered. Neither man spoke for several seconds. Then a voice said, "Hello, brother." Matteo could not move. The voice was older, deeper, but he remembered it. Luca. My name has been Gabriel for a long time. Where are you? That doesn't matter. It matters to me. You should stop looking for me. You disappeared for 26 years. I was forced to disappear. By father. Yes. Matteo closed his eyes. Why? Luca was silent. Then he said, because I discovered what he did to our mother. Matteo's eyes opened. Their mother, Elena Valdieri, had died in a car accident when Matteo was 15. What are you talking about? It wasn't an accident. Matteo gripped the phone. Who told you that? I found the records. What records? Father ordered it. Matteo stood frozen. You're lying. I wish I was. The call ended. Matteo threw the phone across the room. For the first time in years, he felt completely powerless. He had spent his life protecting the Valdieri name. But now every truth he discovered made that name feel heavier. Later that night, Silas Moretti regained consciousness. Matteo rushed to the private clinic. Silas was weak but able to speak. You need to understand, Silas whispered. Darius isn't working for Luca. Then who? Silas struggled to breathe. The man who killed your father. Matteo leaned closer. Who killed him? Silas whispered one name. Arden. Matteo stepped back. Arden Vale. His security chief. The man who had protected him for 15 years. At that exact moment, the clinic doors opened. Arden entered. And he was not alone. Arden Vale entered the clinic with 4 armed men. Matteo looked at him calmly. So it was you. Arden smiled. Not all of it. Matteo glanced at Silas. Did you kill my father? Yes. Why? Because he asked me to. Matteo frowned. Arden placed a small recorder on the table. He pressed play. Vittorio Valdieri's voice filled the room. If Matteo ever learns what happened to Elena, the family will collapse. Luca knows too much. I have failed both my sons. Matteo listened without moving. The recording continued. Vittorio confessed that Elena had discovered his plan to eliminate the former leader of the organization and seize control. She threatened to expose him. Vittorio ordered one of his men to frighten her into silence. The plan went wrong. Elena died. Vittorio covered it up. Years later, Luca discovered the truth. Vittorio ordered Luca to be detained, but the warehouse fire gave Luca a chance to escape. Rosalia helped him disappear. Matteo looked at Arden. Why did my father ask you to kill him? Guilt. That's not enough. Arden smiled. You're right. He stopped the recording. Your father also knew that Darius was preparing to overthrow him. Vittorio believed his death would force the family to unite behind you. Matteo understood. His entire rise had been engineered. His father had chosen him as the final piece of a plan. What do you want, Arden? The same thing every man beside a throne eventually wants. The throne. Arden nodded. For 15 years, he had quietly built alliances inside the Valdieri organization. The letter had disrupted his plan. If Matteo found Luca and uncovered the truth, the brothers might unite. Arden could not allow that. You attacked my tower. Yes. You took Darius. Yes. And the attacks on my businesses? Darius helped with those. Why? Because I promised him your position. Matteo almost smiled. You promised the same throne to two different men. I only needed one of you to destroy the other. Suddenly, the lights in the clinic went out. Arden cursed. The emergency power failed to activate. A voice came through the darkness. You always talk too much, Arden. Matteo recognized it. Luca. Chaos followed. Doors slammed. Men shouted. Within minutes, police sirens could be heard approaching. Arden's men fled. When the lights returned, Luca stood at the end of the hallway. For the first time in 26 years, the brothers saw each other face to face. Matteo stared at him. Luca's hair had turned gray at the temples. A scar ran across one side of his face. But he was still Luca. Matteo walked toward him. Why didn't you come back? Luca answered quietly. Because I thought you had become father. Matteo stopped. And now? Now I'm not sure. Before Matteo could answer, Arden appeared behind Luca. A struggle followed, but Arden was quickly overpowered by Elias and the security officers who had remained loyal to Matteo. Arden was taken into custody as the police surrounded the building. Matteo looked at Luca. Come home. Luca shook his head. There is no home. We can rebuild. No, Matteo. Why? Luca looked at his brother. Because the Valdieri Empire was built on our mother's silence, our father's lies, and our separation. Matteo said nothing. Luca continued. If you rebuild it, you rebuild him. Then Luca walked away. Matteo did not stop him. For the first time in his life, the most powerful man in Bellarosa City stood alone. 6 months later, Valdieri Tower was sold. The criminal organization that had controlled Bellarosa City for decades slowly disappeared. Some members fled. Some were arrested. Others accepted Matteo's final payment and walked away. Matteo surprised everyone. He surrendered financial records connected to corrupt officials and illegal businesses. In exchange for cooperation, he avoided the worst possible outcome, though he lost most of his empire. He kept only one thing. The old family residence. One afternoon, he returned there alone. The house was empty. Dust covered the furniture. Matteo entered his father's old study. For hours, he searched through drawers, cabinets, and boxes. Then he found another envelope. It was hidden beneath a loose floorboard. His name was written on it. Matteo. He opened it. The letter was from his father. Son, if you are reading this, then the truth has finally reached you. I spent my life believing power could protect a family. Instead, I used power to destroy mine. Your mother was stronger than I was. Luca was braver than I was. And you were forced to inherit the consequences of my choices. Matteo stopped reading. For years, he had wanted one final conversation with his father. Now he had it. But the dead could explain themselves without answering questions. He folded the letter and placed it in his pocket. Outside the house, a car waited. Elias stood beside it. Where to? Matteo looked at the city in the distance. Rosalia's bookshop. Elias smiled slightly. You think Luca will be there? I don't know. And if he isn't? I'll wait. The bookshop was almost empty when Matteo arrived. Rosalia sat behind the counter. She looked at him without surprise. He's upstairs, she said. Matteo climbed the narrow staircase. Luca stood near the window. Neither brother spoke immediately. Finally, Matteo placed their father's letter on the table. I found this. Luca looked at it. I don't want to read it. Neither did I. Luca turned toward him. Matteo continued. I spent 26 years believing you were dead. And I spent 26 years believing you were becoming him. Maybe we were both wrong. Luca looked away. Matteo walked toward the door. I'm leaving Bellarosa tomorrow. Where are you going? I don't know yet. Luca nodded. Matteo opened the door. Then Luca spoke. Matteo. He turned. Luca picked up his coat. You still drive too fast? For the first time in months, Matteo smiled. You still complain too much? Luca walked toward him. Some wounds could not be erased. Some years could not be recovered. But sometimes, a letter meant for one person reached another because the truth had waited long enough. The two brothers walked downstairs together. Rosalia watched them leave. On the table upstairs remained two letters. One had exposed the past. The other had finally ended it. And outside, Bellarosa City continued moving beneath a clear morning sky, unaware that the Valdieri Empire had ended not with a war, but with an envelope that reached the wrong man.